Hi everyone, my name's Will Valida. I'm a software engineer and cloud architect, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Microsoft DevBox. So DevBox gives developers self-service access to cloud stations called DevBoxes. You can configure these DevBoxes with the tools, source code, any pre-built binaries that you need that are specific to project that your developers in your team are going to be working on. So they can hit the ground running immediately, and they don't have to wait for permissions to be granted, security to sign off of anything, finance to approve any funding, anything like that. You can use pre-configured images that are available in the Azure Marketplace, or you can build your own customized images. And as developers, you can use multiple dev boxes for your work and access it through remote desktop clients or any web browsers, just like any other virtual desktop. DevBox was created with three roles in mind: platform engineers, dev team leads, and developers. So, your platform engineers and IT administrators will work together to provide developers with the tools and infrastructure they need to do their job. This includes any settings or any managing settings and managing security settings, network configurations, organizational policies, anything like that to ensure that dev boxes can be access resources that developers need securely. Your dev team leads will have in-depth knowledge about their projects. They can serve as administrators and assisting with creating and managing the developer experience. They can also create and manage pools of dev boxes. Then finally, developers are the people who are going to be using your dev boxes. Developers can self-serve one or more dev boxes on demand from the DevBox pools that are enabled for the projects. DevBox users can work on multiple projects or tasks at the same time by creating multiple dev boxes. The intention behind Microsoft DevBox is to bridge the gap between development teams and IT operation teams and prevent long waiting times just for your developers to get onboarded and do their job. Now, how does this all work? Well, before developers can go ahead and create dev boxes in the developer portal, we'll need to create something called a DevCenter and a project in Microsoft DevBox. So a DevCenter is the top level resource for Microsoft DevBox. The DevCenter will collect or contain a collection of projects and the shared resources for these projects, such as DevBox definitions and network connections. Now, technically, there are no limits to the number of DevCenters you can create, but usually you just need the one. The DevBox project is for your development teams. You can assign the DevBox user role to a project to grant them permissions to create DevBoxes, and you can create one or more projects within your Dev Center. A DevBox definition will specify how your DevBoxes will be configured, and this includes the virtual machine image and compute resources. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these can be either from the Azure Marketplace or you can use your own customized virtual machine images. Your projects will contain a collection of DevBox pools, sorry. A DevBox pool will specify the configuration of the DevBox, which includes the DevBox definition, network connection, and any other settings. All DevBoxes that are created from a DevBox pool will share the same configuration. Now, the network connection that's associated with a DevBox pool determines where your DevBox is hosted. You can use either a Microsoft hosted connection or you can bring your own Azure Virtual Network. If you need control over the virtual network, or if you require access to your own corporate resources, you'll want to use your own Azure Virtual Network connection. Developers can then create a dev box from the pool by using the developer portal, where they can choose boxes from a specific pool based on virtual machine images, compute resources, or where the actual dev box is hosted. Once the box is running, your developers can connect to it remotely by using a desktop client or directly from the browser. So let's see this in action, and we're going to go through a demo and create all the resources we need to set up our first Microsoft DevBox. So we'll start by creating a Dev Center, then we'll create a DevBox definition and a DevBox pool, then we'll provide access to a DevBox project, and then finally we'll be able to create our new DevBoxes. Let's jump in. All right, so let's set up all the resources that we need for our Microsoft DevBox. Okay, so the process of setting up Microsoft DevBox kind of involves two phases. You can separate them out into what platform engineers will do and what developers will do. So in the first phase, platform engineers will actually configure all the resources necessary, either through the portal or through infrastructure as code. And we're going to do it through the portal just so it makes it a little bit more visual, but I'll do a video in the future on how you can actually set this up using Bicep. After this is complete, your developers can come in and then create and manage their dev boxes through a developer portal. So let's start off by creating a DevCenter. So in order to actually do all of this, there are some prerequisites. So you need an Azure account, you need to be able to be an owner or contributor in an Azure subscription or a resource group. You need Microsoft Entra, Microsoft Intune, some user licenses. I'll put a link to some documentation which actually details all the prerequisites that you need, but make sure you have all of those before you start. Cool, so let's get started with our Dev Center. Now, a Dev Center in Microsoft DevBox provides a centralized place for you to manage a collection of projects, the configuration of available DevBox images and sizes, and also your networking settings to enable you to access your resources within your corporate network. So, I've got a resource group that I've just set up here, and the first thing I'm going to do is create a Dev Center. So, click on Create. I'll be taken to the marketplace. I'm just going to type in Dev Center. Click on Dev Center, and the one that we're looking for is this one right here, Dev Center. So let's go ahead and create that. Hopefully it'll take me, yes, okay, cool. So what I need to do, I need to give it a name. So we'll be Dev Center, enter it a particular location. So I'll choose West US 3. Why is that? Why is that error showing? Never mind. One thing that there we go, it's gone. One thing that you can do is you can attach a quick start catalog for DevBox customization tasks or something called Azure Deployment Environment definitions. I'm going to do a video in the future covering Azure Deployment environments. It's a pretty cool concept, but for now we can just go ahead and just untick that. We could also apply tags to this like we would any other kind of Azure resource. So I'll just put will v co, say that's the name of my organization, click review and create. That resource is passed, or the validation is passed, sorry. So if I click create, that's going to go ahead and create my Dev Center. Cool, so there my Dev Center has been created. So if I go to my resource, I can see that everything has been set up correctly. There we go. Cool. So now what we need to do is create a project. So DevBox projects enable you to manage team level settings. And these settings include providing access to your developers so they can go ahead and create dev boxes. And each dev center needs at least one project. So in order to create a project, I can scroll down here under manage, click projects. I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. So once this loads up, I need to give it some details. So I'm going to assign it to the Dev Center that I've just created. Give it a name. So will be Dev Center Test Project. I can give it a description if I want. But next, what I want to do is I'm going to go into DevBox Management. Now here we can actually apply some limits. So limits allow you to restrict how many dev boxes each developer can create. And this is great for controlling your costs because you're charged for when your dev boxes are running. For now, I'm just going to leave it as no. But if you wanted to click yes, you can actually choose how many dev boxes a developer can create. So I'm going to go ahead and click no for now. Again, you can apply tags to this, but I'm just going to click view and create. That's passed. And I'm going to go ahead and create that project. Make sure I click create. That would help. There we go. Submitting the deployment. And there we go. My deployment's complete. So if I go to my resource, I should see my project already been created. There we go. Fantastic. Cool. The next thing we need to do is create a DevBox definition. So your DevBox definition will define the virtual machine image and also the virtual machine size. So that's compute and storage size. That's going to be used when you actually create your dev boxes. Now, depending on the type of development project or developer profiles, you can actually go ahead and create multiple DevBox definitions. So taking an example, you might need to provision a DevBox definition with a certain tool set that your developers are using, whereas others might need a bit more of a gruntier cloud station that has a bit more compute resources. So you can define multiple DevBox definitions to suit those developers' needs. Now, the DevBox definitions that you create in a Dev Center will be available for all projects associated with that Dev Center. And you need at least one DevBox definition you need at least one of them in your DevCenter. So to go ahead, what I'm going to do, I am going to just go back into the resource group. I'm then going to go into my DevCenter, and then here under DevBox definitions, just click on that. And I should be able to create a new DevBox definition. Cool, there we go. So here, what I need to do is give my DevBox a name, DevBox definition a name, sorry. So I'm just going to name it WV test DevBox definition. There's a whole bunch of different images that I can use. So there's Visual Studio 2022 on Windows 11, Windows 10, Pro, Windows 11, Windows 10, etc. I'm just going to go ahead and use Visual Studio 2022 Enterprise on Windows 11. We can specify an image version, so I'm going to just use the latest. And then we can also specify the compute and storage size. So for compute, I'm just going to use bare bones for now. So 32 gigabit of RAM for compute, and then 256 gig for storage. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. And that's going to go ahead and create my DevBox definition. Cool, so that's gone ahead and succeeded, which is great. So now I have a DevBox definition. So once I have this, we can now go ahead and create a DevBox pool in our project. Now remember, your DevBox pool is a collection of DevBoxes that have the same settings, such as the same DevBox definition and the network connection. And then developers that have access to that project in the DevCenter can then choose to create a DevBox from the DevBox pool. DevBox pools also define the location of DevBoxes through the specified network connection. And like I said, you can either choose to deploy this to a Microsoft hosted connection or to a network that you manage. And if you want to deploy your DevBoxes to a network that you manage, you'd have to configure a network connection. We haven't done that in this, but if you want to bring your DevBox pools closer to a location where your developers are sitting, or you want to connect it to corporate resources, you need to do that. But for now, let's go and create a DevBox pool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my project, and I should see DevBox pools. This is what I want. So once this loads up, I'm going to create a new DevBox pool. And again, I'm going to provide it a name. So WV DevBox pool. The DevBox definition, I'm going to use the one that we created earlier. And we can choose which region we're going to deploy this DevBox pool to. I can either deploy it to a Microsoft hosted network, or I could deploy it to a network connection in my organization. I'm just going to use the Microsoft hosted network for now. I can enable single sign-on for this DevBox pool if I wanted to. The DevBox creator privileges, I can set this as either a standard user or local administrator. I'm just going to use local administrator for now. For auto stop, we can actually enable auto stop on our DevBox pools. So if I just click yes and show you what this means. DevBox pools, when you enable auto stop, essentially what happens is all the DevBoxes in the pool will auto stop every day at a particular time that you set it. So I'm in Melbourne at the moment, so my time zone set to Melbourne. I can change this to any kind of time zone that I want. For some reason, it wasn't letting me do it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Portal is just taking a bit of time, but we don't mind that. And I can also set the time that those dev boxes are going to stop. So if you want your developers to only be able to provision a dev box between the hours of, say, 9 and 6, you can go ahead and configure that. Or if you want all of them to stop at, say, 8 o'clock, you can do that. I'm just going to click no for now, and then licensing. So you have to confirm that your organization has Azure Hybrid Benefit licenses, and that applies to all DevBox in this pool. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that, and then I'm just going to go ahead and click create. And that's going to go and create my DevBox pool. Cool, so that has been successfully created. So there's my DevBox pool. Cool, so now before users can go ahead and create dev boxes based on the DevBox pools in my project, I have to provide access to those users through role assignments. And the role assignment that I'm looking for here is DevBox user role. This will enable DevBox users the ability to create, manage, and delete their own dev boxes. And we essentially grant this access for the users at the level of the project. So what I'm going to do, I'm in my test project now. So what I need to do is go into access control. Portal's been very quick for me today. I'm going to add a new role assignment. Once the portal makes up its mind, fantastic, cool. So the one that we're looking for is Dev Box User. So, had it there. DevCenter Dev Box User, that's the one. And again, it provides access to create and manage dev boxes. Let's go ahead and click that. And then I'm going to assign it to a particular user. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my work email address, .au, and there we go. Select that. Now, just something to note here, if I try to put a personal account or a guest account in there, it's not going to work. So Microsoft DevBox only supports work and school accounts. So when you're assigning permissions to users, just keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and review and assign that. So assign that to myself. Another thing to mention is that Microsoft DevBox also makes it possible for you to delegate administration of projects to members of a project team. And this really helps because then project administrators can assist with the day-to-day management of projects for their teams. They can go ahead and create and manage those DevBox pools, set limits on the DevBoxes, and also configure auto-stop schedules. So that's just some cool things that you can do when you delegate to other project administrators. Cool. So those are all the resources that we need in Microsoft DevBox to enable our users to go ahead and create their own dev boxes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually create and connect to a dev box. Cool. So to create a dev box, we need to go to the Microsoft DevBox developer portal. So here we go. I've got a tab opened for that already. And I've signed in with my work credentials. I've also accessed the Azure subscription where I've provisioned all my DevCenter resources. So now what I want to do is click Add a Dev Box. So here we can just add a dev box to the dev box pool. So I'll just use WV test 1. It's going to provision it within this DevCenter project that I created earlier. It's also going to create this dev box based on the configurations of my dev box pool. So that dev box pool that we created earlier, it's going to use those dev box definitions. There's other things that we can do with this. So we can add some customizations. So at the project level, remember when we were creating that project, we could have the option to add customization catalogs with tasks to the project. We can clone stuff from repositories, etc. There's a bunch of different stuff that we can do. But for now, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and click Create. And that's going to go ahead and create my dev box for me. Now, this can take anywhere between 25 minutes to over an hour. So I'm going to use some video editing here just to speed this process up. Cool. And through the power of video editing, I have got my dev box ready and available to go. So that obviously took a lot of time. So I've just edited that out because I'm not going to make you guys sit there for almost over an hour for that to provision. So to connect to my dev box, I can either open it in an RDP client or I can open it in the browser, which I'm going to do. And I need to sign into my work account. So I had a bit of a test to make sure everything was working, but in session settings, we can add printer, file transfers, all that kind of stuff for our cloud PC to use. Going to click on connect. And I'll just sign in with my work account, make sure I get my password right. And there we go. I am connecting to my dev box. Fantastic. Okay, cool. So this would obviously, because I'm creating this for the first time, it's going to set this up. I'm going to just skip that for now. But there we go. So I've got my application settings, Visual Studio 2022 installed, Unity Hub. That's pretty cool. So this is a customized, well, this is a VM image that I've used out of the box. Some of the more powerful things and more realistic scenarios that you would probably use is customizing your images with the tools that you need. So this just has Visual Studio 2022 on it. It's going to try and load Teams, so that's probably going to take up a few compute resources, but that's okay. I'll just delete that, get rid of that. see what else. Do I have Docker on this thing? I do not. No. One of the cool things that you can do is install Docker on here. So what I might do is actually go ahead and install that in the background. Cool. I've gone ahead and installed a couple of things in the background. So I've installed Docker Desktop. I've installed Visual Studio Code as well. And I'm going to try something cool. So what I'm going to do, I've got this basic C# program, and I'm going to attempt to Dockerize it. So I've published it. I know it runs locally. So let's go Docker build counter image. And the file will be the Docker file. There we go. That's going to go ahead and build. So it's going to process each line in my Docker file here. Hopefully I've got everything correct. Cool, so that's gone ahead and built my Docker image. So now if I just go Docker images, hopefully I should see my image there. Fantastic, that's cool. So now I'm going to go ahead and create a container. Let me get some more real estate so you guys can actually see my terminal. Why's that not going? There we go, that's better. Docker create name core counter. I'm going to use the counter image. It's going to go ahead and create a container for me, which is fantastic. I'll just make sure it's there within the list of containers. Fantastic. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my container. So Docker run counter image, not rim, run. There we go, counter image. There we go. And that's going to run my C# container. So it's just essentially a counter that's displaying to the console every second. But the power behind that's a fairly straightforward example of Docker and C#. But for those of you who have used any kind of virtual machine in the past, maybe you've used VMware, anything like that to do your development on, this is nested virtualization. So within a virtual machine, I'm running Docker. I'm able to work on Docker applications, develop Docker applications as I would an actual physical machine. So all the problems that you've had with nested virtualization are gone with Microsoft DevBox, which I think is an absolute game changer. It's mind-blowing. Cool, so that's going to wrap up this video on Microsoft DevBox. This was a gentle introduction of what Microsoft DevBox is, what problems it solves, and how we can actually provision resources through the portal. It's a very click-opsy demo, I know, but it's just to kind of get that visualization in your head and understand the moving parts, moving components between and how they all relate to each other in the terms of Microsoft DevBox, so we can actually enable our developers to provision machines quickly so they can hit the ground running rather than waiting for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I've waited 4 weeks for a physical device for everything that I need just to start our job so we can actually hit the ground running and develop from day one. If you like this video, give it a like. I'm going to do more content on Microsoft DevBox, particularly the next one I feel that I need to do is around how we can actually provision all of these resources with infrastructure as code, and also how we can actually customize these images. I had to take a break to install all the software that I needed on my DevBox to make sure everything worked. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually introduce customized images to see, so we can actually provision dev boxes with all the tools that our developers need from day one. So if you want to see that video, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. No matter where you are in the world, I hope you're having a great day. We'll see you all next time for some more Microsoft DevBox content.